Welcome to Slasher's Advocate, the satire series that makes serious arguments in favor of the evil icons of your favorite horror movies. Note, I am not now, nor have I ever been a lawyer, psychologist, or criminal profiler, but I'd love to play one on TV. Call me. For the next 2 months, we'll be covering the baddies from the Scream series. And don't worry, I'm still working on a timeline to defense of Michael Myers, but with the new Scream movie coming out this month, it felt far more appropriate to focus on my more current clients. So we'll be going movie by movie, culminating in my defense of whoever turns out to be the killer or killers of Scream 5. Today, we make the case for William Loomis and Stuart Mocker, better known as Billy and Stu from the original Scream. Although there is a suspected appearance by Stu in Scream 2, but we'll get into that later. Accusation. Billy and Stu were psychopaths who were influenced by the scary movies they watched. They were puppets in a much bigger plot, and their weaknesses were exploited. It wasn't movies that turned them into killers. It was movie maker Roman Bridger, who was revealed in Scream 3 to have been the mastermind all along. Billy was victimized by Roman stoking his anger over a tough emotional time in his life, and Stu, well, poor simple Stu was taken in by Billy's terrifying charisma. Add in bad parents and lack of adult supervision to the mix, and you have a recipe for death and destruction. Billy and Stu, while guilty of murder and deserving of punishment for their crimes, were not merely killers, but also victims of mental illnesses and traumas that were exploited by others around them who were far more evil. There have been many times over the decades when pearl clutchers worried that scary movies were ruining the youth of the nation. There have been calls to reform the genre or get rid of it altogether in the name of decency.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Horror fans in general are considered weird or demented when really horror is an in-depth study into the depravity of a society at any given point. Horror fans like blood and guts, sure, but most of us also understand that we're getting a lesson in psychology as well, through the characters and the minds creating the art. Even in the worst of the B movies, there's something to be gleaned about the human psyche. Scream uses the argument that horror movies are to blame for their villains' crimes and then expertly uses their own characters to debunk that theory. In Scream 2, Mickey is determined to blame the movies for his defense, but Mrs. Loomis shoots him and then rightly declares his plan to be dumb, because she understands that movies cannot entangle a mind that isn't already twisted. Also, Randy is way more into horror movies than anyone else in the entire Scream series.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula.
He may be a horror-obsessed weirdo, but he never hurt anyone.
Please, I didn't do it. He did it. Please. Please, Cindy, don't.
Fuck you both!
So, are movies to blame for Billy and Stu? Not according to the characters themselves. When Sydney makes the accusation that they have both seen way too many movies, Billy passionately declared,
Don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
And later, when Sydney asks Stu over the phone what his motive is, he doesn't blame the movies. Instead, he says it
Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive.
before Billy cuts him off. Their replies here indicate that they both know what's wrong with them. For Billy, he knows that he's been way too screwed up by life, and for Stu, he knows that he wasn't strong enough and was probably too scared of Billy to simply say no to his friend's murder plot. So if the characters themselves don't blame the movies, how can anyone else blame the movies? So if not the movies, then what turned these two teenagers into serial killers?
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
Simple answer, psychological damage from lack of a nurturing environment, leaving weakened minds to develop abnormally and thus allowing Roman's influence to take hold. Now, you may be saying, sure, we see enough of Billy's parents throughout the original trilogy to infer that they're both shitty, but we never even meet Stu's parents, and he's clearly from a rich family. So how can we determine that he had a poor upbringing? Well, I would argue that the fact that we never meet Stu's parents is our biggest indicator that they're not exactly mom and dad of the year. Stu may have been worried that his parents would be mad about all the murder, but not mad enough to not throw a murder party at his house.
My mom and dad are gonna be so mad.
And why were they still out of town when all of Woodsboro is going on lockdown because there's a serial killer on the loose? Sydney's dad is shown to be loving and protective of his daughter before he leaves for his business trip, so I fully believe that he would have cut his trip short and come home if Billy and Stu hadn't already kidnapped him.
Your daddy's the chief suspect. We cloned his cellular. Evidence is all right there, baby.
So, where are Stu's parents?
You hear that, Stu? I think she wants some motive.
Now, clearly, my defense here is that environment plays a far bigger factor in Billy and Stu's actions than horror movies ever could. Let's delve deeper into that, shall we?
Curiosity often leads to trouble. Good night!
I want to start with Billy, since he's the one pulling Stu's strings. Both of Billy Loomis's parents are shitbags, but since he clearly has some mommy issues, let's focus in on Debbie Loomis. Revealed to be the mastermind behind the killings of Scream 2, it's pretty clear where Billy gets his homicidal tendencies. Debbie does to Mickey what Roman does to her own son, uses his mental illness and trauma to inspire him to violence.
So Mickey here was quite a find. Definitely one on the way up. All he needed was a little guidance and nurturing.
As only a mother can do.
We can never be certain what the relationship of the Loomis family was because we were never given a clear look into their home. But what we can guess is that somehow Debbie managed to keep her son loyal to her above all others. The way Billy speaks to and about his father indicates that he lost all respect for Mr. Loomis when Debbie left, if he ever felt any respect to begin with.
My whole life, I don't get no respect. No respect from anyone.
Billy claims to be over his mother leaving in this scene.
When my mom left my dad, I accepted it. It's the way it is. She's not coming back.
Your parents split up. This is not the same thing. Your mom left town. She's not lying in a coffin somewhere.
Okay. I'm sorry. It's a bad analogy.
But look at his face. His expression and the way he looks to the side while tightening his mouth indicates that he's lying and is far from over the trauma he felt from his parents' actions. Billy's obsession over Debbie leaving shows an unnatural attachment to his mother at his age, making one wonder what their home life was really like. Debbie clearly cultivated an extremely close relationship with her son and then just up and left him when she was upset about her husband's infidelity. It's entirely understandable that a child would question why their mother would leave them behind when their father was the one she was mad at. This is a pain that Billy was already dealing with when Roman came along with video evidence of why his mother left. Maureen Prescott was sleeping with his father. So while Billy's rage should have been directed at his parents, his upset mind was molded by Roman to blame Maureen.
We did your mom a favor, Sid. That woman was a slutbag whore who flashed her shit all over town like she was Sharon Stone or something.
And as we know, Roman has his own reasons for wanting Maureen to suffer. And by blaming Maureen and making her the villain, Billy is finally able to stop blaming himself for his mother leaving him behind. Now, I can hear you saying, okay, maybe we can blame Billy killing Maureen on the influences around him, but doesn't continuing on to kill Casey Becker and her boyfriend Steve seem to indicate a general psychopathy influenced by their taste in horror movies?
Well, let's go get some drinks and then kill a bunch of fuckers.
I mean, they even use horror movies as games in order to torment their victims.
I want to play a game.
Let me again remind you that these are two teenage boys. Like most normal teenagers, they felt they were smarter than everyone around them and entirely invincible. Unlike most normal teenagers, they also learn that killing is an easy way to solve their emotional problems.
Gravy.
Casey and Steve's deaths seem to come out of the blue, but we later learn that Stu used to date Casey.
Yeah, for like 2 seconds.
In fact, there's even a dispute over whether Stu broke up with Casey in order to date Tatum, or, more likely the case, Casey broke up with Stu in order to date Steve.
Before she dumped him for Steve.
I thought you dumped it for me.
I did, he's full of shit.
Billy was upset over what he viewed as Maureen destroying his family, and killing her solved that. Stu is upset over Casey breaking up with him to date Steve, so why not try killing him to solve it? By the time they target Casey and the rest of their friends, their minds have been so twisted and exploited that their thinking becomes both complex and childish.
Snapped. Your mother's anniversary set him off, and he went on a murder spree, killing everyone.
Except for Billy and me. We were left for dead.
Then he kills you and shoots himself in the head. Perfect ending.
I thought of that.
The plot to kill everyone and blame Sydney's dad in order to really stick it to Maureen is complicated with lots of moving parts that require lots of planning to pull off. But their use of games shows a high level of immaturity, as does their entire reasoning behind it. How does killing everyone hurt Maureen when she's already dead? It's simply just two angry boys lashing out at the world right up until they both meet their end. So, what about Stu? He has no involvement in the whole Mr. Loomis cheats, so Mrs. Loomis abandons the family plot point. So, why does he help Billy kill Maureen and frame Cotton? Well, probably because he's too scared to say no to Billy.
Fuck! Fucking hit me with a phone, Dick!
I mean, of course, that Billy is scary in the I'll kill you if you say no to me kind of way.
Say hello to your mother.
But I also mean it in the way that it's scary to go against your friends at that age. If you remember high school, whether your experience was good or bad, it felt like the most important time in our lives, where everything mattered and would last forever. Parents and teachers tell us that this is the time in our lives where we should be getting our shit together and our futures planned. A lot of pressure is placed on teens. School, work, college planning, after-school activities, social life, helping out at home, all things expected of a 16-year-old while also still unfairly treating them as a child with rules and curfews. Add in peer pressure from friends, and it's a lot of stress and frustration to carry on a normal teen's shoulders. And Stu isn't normal. Stu is a bored rich kid who's looking for something to make him feel special. But his mannerisms and the fact that he's easily confused while also being smart and capable in things that interest him seems to indicate that he might have ADHD.
It was just a misunderstanding.
He may be entertaining to us, the audience, during his sporadic screen time, but he would actually be a lot to handle in real life every day. Which is why he's an outcast. Think about it. As a rich white kid whose parents are out of town all the time so he can throw parties, Stu should be way more popular than he is. Why is he hanging out with Woodboro High's reject crowd? Billy is the creepy, quiet loner. Sydney is the weirdo whose mom was murdered. Tatum is the bitchy girl who doesn't give a shit. And Randy is the movie nerd who works at the video store.
Maybe your movie-freaked mind lost its reality button. You ever think of that?
You're absolutely right. I'm the first to admit it. If this were a scary movie, I'd be the prime suspect.
Stu should have been hanging with Casey and Steve's crowd, but instead he was dumped by Casey and cast out of the Cool Kids Club. Why? Because there's something off about him that others can't quite figure out, but know enough to find off-putting, and that pushes him to the fringes with the other not normal kids. Billy is a confident leader who doesn't speak often and doesn't worry about impressing anyone because he's too mad at the world to care.
Hey, it's called tact, you fuck rag.
Stu is an eager follower who talks loudly to get attention and acts goofy in a misguided attempt to make others like him.
Yeah! I'm ready, baby!
They found each other, and then Roman found them.
Roman Bridger, director.
Who takes those he cast in his revenge plot and guides them on to their killer performances.
Your boyfriend didn't like seeing his daddy in my film too much. He didn't like it at all. Once I supplied the motivation, all the kid needed was a few pointers. Have a partner to sell out in case you get caught, find someone to frame. It was like he was making a movie.
There's no way to deny that Billy and Stu are guilty of murder. But had Roman not sought out Billy, perhaps the boys would have never explored their psychological inclinations. And Going even further, had Billy's mother not abandoned him because she was mad at his father, Roman would have never been able to turn Billy's intense anger against Maureen.
Seems Maureen, Mom, she really got around. I mean, cotton was one thing. Everybody knew about that. But Billy's father, that was the key.
The effects of divorce on a child's psychological development have been studied extensively. The results are mixed, but generally trend toward bad. And remember, Billy's parents didn't just go through a divorce. Billy's father cheated with the mother of Billy's girlfriend, and then Mrs. Loomis decides to abandon the family, leaving behind her son and giving him a guilt complex as well as abandonment issues.
I'm sick to death of people saying that it's all the parents' fault. It all starts with the family. You don't know what it is to be a mother. To raise a child, and teach him, and guide him, and abandon him.
When Roman comes along, offering a way for Billy to turn all those bad feelings he has about himself onto Maureen, it turns into an ill-conceived revenge plot.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
Had Billy received therapy for his anger problems, maybe he could have fought off the idea of revenge. Had Stu received diagnosis and treatment for his ADHD, maybe he could have fit in better with his peers and not been roped into a murder plot. If anyone had been paying attention to what these two boys were going through, maybe they could have found a way to heal and moved on to live their best life. Instead, Billy is shot to death and Stu has a TV dropped on his head. Guys, I love pop culture discussions. So, if you disagree with any of my points, or if you have some of your own to add, please do so down in the comments. And remember, let's be respectful. This is all just in good fun, so there's no need for name-calling, bad words, or general rudeness. Let's all be the awesome horror fan community that I know we are. Thanks for watching, and good night, good fright! On the bright side, Stu might not be dead. If you haven't heard of this theory before, allow me to enlighten you. You see, if you look at Scream 2 and this scene right here, this party scene at the fraternity has this guy in the background. You can't even really see him. Blonde guy. Yeah, that's definitely Matthew Lillard. It's been confirmed. So, I guess he was on set one day. They threw him in the background. Fans of Scream have decided that this is Stu, that he had survived his TV head crushing in Scream 1 and was still stalking Sydney from the background throughout at least her college years. So I guess we'll see how that pans out in Scream 5. I'm excited to find out. Stay tuned, I guess.